Hello wine lovers, I'm Tara O'Leary, the Wine Passionista. Today we are talking about the 4 ways to know if your wine is good. You know, when I'm at a friend's house, invariably at some point during the evening, she'll pull out a bottle and say to me, "Is this any good?" And I'll say, "Well, you have to open it to find out." Unfortunately, yes, we can garner some information from the label, absolutely. But if we're going to know if the wine itself is any good, the only way to do that is with a glass, a corkscrew, and your taste buds. So I'm going to take you through it today and give you the 4 secrets to figuring out if your wine is actually good. So you might ask, isn't it enough to know that I like the wine and therefore it must be good? Well, yes and no. It's wonderful if you like the wine, but if you want to know if it's a really good wine, these 4 things will really help you determine that, regardless of your personal preferences. The first one is smell. So before you even take a sip of the wine, stick your nose in the glass and take a good whiff. Does it smell like wine? I mean, seriously, does it smell fruity and floral? You don't have to worry about coming up with lots of descriptors for it. But as long as there are nice aromas coming out of the glass, then your wine has passed the first test. If, however, it smells a bit like your dog after he's been swimming, or the newspaper that was left out in the rain, a really damp newspaper or wet cardboard, then that's symbolizing that your wine is most likely corked, and unfortunately, you're just gonna have to pour it down the drain and crack another one. But as long as there are good aromas coming from your glass, we are one step closer to having a good wine. Number 2 is balance. Now, if your wine passes the sniff test, the next thing to look for is balance. And you may have heard that term before and just thought it was more wine mumbo jumbo. But actually, balance is a very important aspect of wine. And in fact, you may have had a wine that was out of balance before and probably you didn't like it, but you didn't know why. So when we're talking about balance, it means that all the components of a wine, like the acidity, the fruit, the tannins, and the alcohol are all nicely balanced with one another, and one doesn't stand out above the rest. So for example, if you had a wine with an acidity that it made your eyes water, or tannins so big and strong that it felt like your mouth had been dried out with a towel, then those wines are probably not in balance. But what you want is to be able to taste that lovely freshness from the acidity. You want some good powerful tannins, but not overwhelming. You want good fruit, good concentration of fruit, and the alcohol to be imperceptible. You don't want to feel that heat on the back of your throat. So if all of those things are nicely aligned with one another, then I would suggest your wine is in balance. Check. Number 3, when you're determining if you've got a good wine, is depth. And I don't mean the depth of color, I mean the depth of flavor. So this is about taste. When you put the wine in your mouth, pay attention to what you're tasting. Give it a good swirl around. Really coat your mouth with the wine so that you can get all of those flavors. Now, what I'm talking about with depth of flavor, absolutely you're going to have fruit. At least I hope you have some fruit in your wine. But is there anything else? Is there anything beyond the fruit? So for example, in a white, you might have some nuts or some biscuits. In a red, you might find some coffee notes or chocolate notes. That is expressing the depth of flavor. And the more the wine sits in your glass and the more that the air gets into it and opens up those aromas and flavors, you'll get more and more of this depth of flavor. A wine with depth of flavor is certainly a candidate for a good wine. And lastly, and perhaps most easily, the 4th aspect to know if your wine is any good is the finish. And quite simply, all that means is how long you can still taste those lovely flavors on your palate after you've swallowed. So if the wine just drops right off and you don't taste anything after a second or two, then that probably means the wine's not that great. But if those lovely fruity flavors are still lingering for 3, 4, 5 seconds or longer, now you're talking about a quality wine. And this is one of the quickest, easiest ways to tell if your wine is any good. And of course, if it's still lingering after 10 seconds or 30 seconds, then you may have hit the jackpot and hold on to that wine. So next time you want to know if the wine you have is any good, crack open the bottle and remember these 4 elements of smell, balance, depth, and finish. And if they all tick the boxes and you like the wine, well, that's worth drinking too. And do me a favor and check out my other wine pointers on quickanddirtytips.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Tara_Devon, on Facebook at Wine Passionista and online at winepassionista.com. Look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers!